A basic understanding of the principles of feedback are an essential part of good quality teaching. This is true from both a student's perspective, i.e., the teacher's ability to provide good quality feedback to their students, and from a teaching perspective, for example, the teacher's ability to appropriately act on feedback they receive or evaluate their own teaching practice. Feedback can come in many forms. Some sources of feedback can be as simple as a teacher informally interacting with their class to gauge how the class is responding to their teaching activity. The more formal implementation of classroom assessment techniques, such as short quizzes or polls, can also be used to gather more accurate feedback on the effectiveness of your teaching. While basic, the humble feedback form can nicely illustrate many aspects of what constitutes good or useful feedback. I would once again stress that these allow both you, the teacher, to gain feedback on your teaching, and the students to evaluate their learning progress. I would like you now to pause the video and take a few moments to compare these two example feedback forms for a teaching session. Think about how these are different and how this impacts the quality of feedback received. I will then go through some examples of what constitutes good feedback. You may pause the video now. I will now go through some of the components of good feedback and highlight why feedback form B provides more useful feedback. Firstly, good feedback should be specific and relevant. For example, the use of Likert scales and categories give a more focused assessment of performance. It has been shown that in order for feedback to be authentic, it should not be overly positive or negative, and a balance between the two must be struck. Following on from this, feedback should be constructive. For example, instead of saying your presentation was boring, too long, and hard to follow, you could rephrase the same points in this statement by saying, instead of 2 or 3 examples on each slide, which distracts from the main message, limit yourself to just the key points. This way, the presentation is more succinct, impactful, and can reduce the overall length. If you feel it necessary to criticise, remember to criticise the action, not the person, remembering that the purpose of good feedback is to encourage growth and foster a belief and drive for improvement, not to degrade. And finally, feedback should be timely, given during or soon after the teaching activity. To summarise, the ability to give and receive feedback is essential to enable both you and your students to reflect and subsequently improve learning and teaching practice. Thank you for your attention.